Hi, Michael, it's Allison, Finance Committee, 9 o'clock, Tuesday morning.
He says we'll be there Thursday at 11:20 a.m. on Friday.
Okay, well, I just left him a message. So hopefully he was driving, which is why he didn't answer his phone.
Yeah, okay, let's keep going if we can. So we've got some minutes of the meeting, whatever the heck that date was, May the 2nd?
I'm okay with
Everybody met? Okay, follow-up items now. One of the, I noticed on the action items, when I looked at it, I happened to push that link, the action item link, and one of the things was an update regarding the fire hall. So where are we at with the costing of the fire hall?
We've hired the architect, and now that we've settled on precisely the footprint with Judy's Lot 3 report, she's working on refining the concept and then into the working drawings.
Okay,
So until she
so
gets
so
into
we don't have an updated construction cost.
And so we don't have an update because she hasn't gotten into the working drawings, but
So-
she hasn't indicated to us that.
Yeah, and do
Going
we
to be
have
over.
any chance of provincial grants on that, or is that a straight community taxpayer kind of funded
No,
situation?
everything we've inquired, the only chance we might get for any grants would be in the sustainability side if we did something other than
Veggie
standard
garden,
heating and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Our
Yeah.
contractor was going to be, the prime contractor,
Yeah,
Johnson Davidson, she may have access and availability to environmental type grants, which she will
yeah.
apply for and be able to basically incorporate additional improvements to the project through grants, through grant funding.
And when do we
And she'll
think
be
we'll get
seeking
an
out those opportunities.
I understand totally the construction
Hopefully
drawings.
within the next 2 weeks, we will
Okay.
have
The interest rates are running away from
Yeah.
us too. I was on the
yeah.
municipal site this morning, and the indicator rate for 20 years is now 3.35. So, flush that through the system, it's whatever, I won't say anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it public knowledge as to who the architect is?
Johnson Davidson?
Oh, so that's,
It is
Yeah.
Johnson, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll
Yeah.
double check on the interest rate, but I believe our interest rate on that loan is
Locked in.
fixed and locked
Oh,
in
is it?
from, yeah, so we just haven't I was gonna talk about that in the financial section, but
Wait
since
wait
we,
if you want.
but I can,
Okay, sure.
I can go over that now, so what we do have is we've got the funds secured, but we haven't,
2 or how much?
Drawing any down.
yeah, it's 2 million,
Okay.
and, but we
3.
haven't, sorry, 3.
We got 2
So we
loans.
got 3 on the loan commitment?
Yeah.
Okay,
A
good.
loan commitment, but we
Good.
haven't drawn the funds from
Sure.
MFA, so they're with MFA, because once we take the funds, we can take them in chunks.
Yeah.
So we'll
There's
take
no
them in
standby
chunks as we
fee or
need
action on
them.
the
No,
loan? Well,
no,
that's
no
sweet.
fees for that, we just basically, let the MFA know.
Is that a 20-year amp, or what do we
30.
get?
Well, it's renewable I think it's renewable after 5 or 10 years, so
So it's a
we're locked
5-year
in for
renewable,
5 or
yeah.
10 years,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. All right, anything else on that?
No.
Okay.
What else was on the follow-up list? I can't remember.
Okay, I am now going to any public comments? Hearing none, I'm going to 4.1. That's democratic there.
Oh, Dave, you're just racing along.
So,
You want to highlight something here, Raj? So I'm on
Yeah.
page 6 of 45, I got this thing organized, right?
my apologies that you guys are receiving this on the table, so to speak, but essentially what this is our operating fund results as of August 31st and a projection to where we'll end up at the end of the year. So basically, in terms of our revenues, I anticipate that we should be a little bit favorable to budget, with slightly favorable to budget variances in our grants revenue, user fees, and donations. So in our user fees, we had received some grant revenue for Mannion Bay Mooring Buoys, and we hadn't budgeted for that revenue, so that's why we're favorable in primarily in user fees. And user fees,
So why would that be user fees, not donations or grants?
they are fees that, sorry, go ahead, Shelley.
Oh, fees from the people for signing
Yeah.
up for their mooring buoy,
Yeah.
not,
Yes.
not
it's
the
a monthly amount.
the
that
monthly
we-
monthly
amount,
amount that
yeah,
they
not,
pay.
not the
Yes.
grant to
Right.
haul
No,
away the derelict
no.
vessel,
Right.
okay, okay.
So, and other types of items that are included in that projected revenue of 547,000 for user fees include like recreation program fees, building permits, and other small docks related fees. I mean, a conglomeration of several different fees there. On the expenditure side,
Can I
we've-
ask
oh,
a
sorry.
question about,
Yes.
donations? We wouldn't budget for donations, so,
Secure donations, we do
Or you
have
mean
some
grant?
donation revenues and grants. Well, no, grants I've got in a separate line.
so
So we
what's
do have
donations?
certain donations that we do budget for. I don't have the list in front of me. I can get back to you on that,
What
Allison.
would be one example without naming somebody's name?
Yeah.
Just so I got,
Well, yeah, because
I
I
picture
don't
it.
see any people donating money to us, and anything that comes in as a cash because of a rezoning application, that isn't a donation, that's
they
an
got forced
amendment.
donation.
Yeah,
I'll follow up to this meeting
Yeah.
and
Okay.
get back to you guys and with a quick email in terms of the typical type of things that are included in our donation
I guess
revenue.
to me, it's very
I-
I
misleading
can't
calling
think
it
of it off the
donation.
top of my
I
head.
can't think off the top of my head, but I've got the
Can
roll
we
up
call
at
it
my
something
desk.
other than
Yeah.
donations? 'Cause-
Well, I would think that when the community foundation makes a donation in support of an activity, that would be recorded there.
That's a donation, but donations are usually gratuitous and come in unexpected, so you don't, even.
Yeah, but you would
Oh,
want to
yeah.
record them
Oh,
somewhere.
yeah, no, but I guess.
Well,
it's-
before we decide-
Part of my question was why we had a budget line for donation. Yeah.
Before we decide on
Yeah.
considering changing that name, let me look at that.
Sure.
And, because I, from my review of it, I believe donations is the appropriate title, because it would be donations that are reflected in there, but I'll give you an example of what they are.
I mean, historically, we've got something, I can see budgeting for it as a filler kind of
Yeah.
stuff. If we've got them, I just can't picture what a
Yeah,
donation would be.
Yeah, unknown, like, it wouldn't
Yeah.
be for unknown or variable type of things, we would be basically budgeting for known, so there are secured type of donations sometimes, but again, I just have to
Sure.
take a look at
We'll
what the
punt it in
items
fairness
would
to
be.
you, right?
Okay.
For just a little history, there's been donations that have been made for the West Side Playground or for the bike park. They
Yeah,
get recorded
yeah.
into there. That's the sort of
Yeah,
thing
so
that-
I don't have a problem calling those donations, but
Yeah.
that was part of the question, because it was such a big amount. And the other was, unless we absolutely knew that donation was coming,
Mhm.
how
Yeah.
could we budget for donations? Because they're usually.
Exactly, I totally
Yeah.
agree with you on that point, Allison. So I will take a look at that and get back
Would you
to
say
you. as a
debt
follow-up.
interest and principal? I guess I looked at this as an income statement rather than a cash flow statement, so is
Yeah,
that
but
the
you're
right
municipal
heading, or am I
work.
missing something?
No, you're in the municipal.
I'm gonna get to that in a few minutes,
All
I'm
right,
gonna
I
go
will
kind
hold,
of in
sorry.
order here
All right.
on the expenditures, so.
Noted.
Basically, I've listed the expenditures from the highest to lowest expenditure amount, and I've provided some explanations down below for variances and what's included in each area. So we've got, we're anticipating to be about 2% favorable, give you an overall comment, summary comment on expenditures, and the primary favorable variance is due to favorable variances in our salary and benefit costs due to vacancies. Either positions were hired for later in the year, or positions remained vacant for part of the year as they were in transition from one person to another. And so in general government, we're expecting to be on budget or marginally unfavorable to budget, and that is primarily due to our IT is handled by our IT consulting costs are handled by an external consultant, Sea to Sky, and the costs exceed the budget provision, so we'll need to make an adjustment in the budget. It wasn't adjusted for, and the budget was not adjusted to reflect anticipated costs for 2018. And,
So
I mean, it's slightly more unfavorable than the 4,200. So the 4,300 is a net impact of favorable salaries, variance, and the IT in a nutshell.
Are we on cameras, Jeff?
Yes.
So will somebody remind me when we get to the closed meeting that I have a question about
Okay.
that one?
Okay. And moving on to Public Works, essentially, the snow and ice removal budget was completely exhausted in the early months of 2018.
As we all were.
So provided that we have a normal November and December, the department is expected to be on budget. However, if we have a very cold, icy, snowy November, December, we can anticipate to be further over budget in public works.
How much is normal? Is that just 1 or 2 days of snow,
And
or is that?
I don't know. how
I
much
can't
it
quantify in terms of days, but if we get anywhere up to a week of cold, icy
Yeah.
weather, it'll put us over budget. So yeah, a couple of days, we should be okay. Recreation is expected to come in on budget, nothing really to report there. Fire and Protective Services is slightly favorable to budget. Primarily, we have a training provision, we had a provision for training in the labor budget for a trainer, and we've externally contracted the training, and so we've got some savings there. And there's also a vacancy. Bonnie is a senior bylaws officer, so bylaw costs are rolled up in Fire and Protective Services. Essentially, we have 3 areas of service in Protective Services. We've got bylaws, we've got fire services, and emergency management services. So Bonnie's vacancy from September to December is reflected in part of that favorable variance. In terms of the planning and development department, we're expected to be favorable on budget, again primarily due to there was a new planner position approved in the budget for 2018, and that wasn't filled until July, I believe. And then also their staff training costs.
Hi, Michael.
My apologies, Chair.
Hi, good morning, Michael.
Panic at the UK end, I'm very sorry.
We're just on page 6 of 45.
Here, Michael.
Like we got revised paperwork for you here.
Thank you.
So we mentioned this, we approved the agenda, we went through the last,
And we're just on number
Yeah.
5.
we went through the last minutes, and Mike was taking us through this page, and he's somewhere down the bottom explaining the variance. That's Rogers.
All right. Sorry. Apologies.
So I was just talking about the planning and development area. The other area that they're under is in staff training costs. Staff have been so busy for the past year that they haven't been able to take external training.
Did they get their compulsory PD in? Like most professional organizations, you have a certain number of hours, so none of them are short on that.
I don't believe so. I'm not entirely
I
sure.
can follow up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because, I mean, that's
Follow up.
just, I mean, sometimes you get a year to catch up, but I don't want us to cost anything to
Okay.
have some issues.
And then the Parks and Environment area, again, we're primarily favorable due to vacancies. Bonnie's position will be vacant. She gets charged, part of her salary gets charged for that area, and also the admin assistant position has been vacant since mid-year. So that's the primary reason for the favorable variance in Parks and Environment. I'm gonna just jump over council strategic initiatives. They're essentially initiatives undertaken by staff at the request of council throughout the year. They're defined during the budget process, and I described some of them in item number 7. So significant strategic initiatives for this year would have included work on the transportation plan, some strategic planning, community lands workshops, and asset management development, and volunteer appreciation event. In terms
So
of
the asset management one hasn't happened, so is that why we're under budget?
Yes. I mean, I've forecasted to be on budget because I'll carry forward the budget for whatever
Yeah.
doesn't happen.
But, because the others had all
Yeah.
sort of happened, so that's why I
Yeah.
thought that was the.
So, and then the debt, interest, and principal are we're showing slightly favorable because we had a provision in the budget for the fire hall, which we haven't taken the debt out on. But that being said, one of the things that I haven't put in the forecast is we are paying down the $2 million temporary borrowing for the community, what we call the community surplus lands. And the bylaw allowed us to borrow up to $2 million from the MFA. We worked off an old bylaw, but when you borrow from the MFA, they hold 1% back in a sinking fund. So we're $20,000 short from the proceeds that we got from borrowing to pay the $2 million loan. So that will come out of our surplus funds and will be reflected in the debt and principal line for this year. We'll be paying that in the next couple of weeks.
I appreciate it's an old line or draw or whatever you want to call it. Is that a floating rate deal on that?
No, it's fixed,
We-
yeah.
It's fixed now.
It's fixed?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
It's in
and how much a year are we, how do you say we're paying down? Is that a fixed repayment schedule
Yes.
after the
It's
20
a-
years?
It's like a bond, it's a bond.
It's a 30-year fixed it's a fixed schedule.
Okay, so
The interest will change
when
after 10
when it
years.
matured after, not matured, but came for renegotiation, whatever I should say, we fixed in the rate for a 5-year rollover, for 30-year,
Term.
Mhm.
and that stays in place as long as we keep rolling every 5 years, is that?
The interest rate will be adjusted at, I believe it's 10 years.
Oh, okay.
And so after 10 years, I think we're at about 3.35%
Okay,
on that.
that's the implied, that's the indicated 10-year currently at MFA.
Yeah, and it might be 3.2 actually, I
okay.
can double check on that.
Actually, it was 331
Yeah,
with a future indicated 335, I'll correct myself.
yeah.
And is there, how much is the how much is the principal we gotta pay down? Roughly, I'm not gonna hold you to my
I've got it on my schedule, but I believe the principal, I think it's gonna be about, what is the annual payment gonna
Well,
be?
Is this a straight 30-year AM? Is it
Yeah,
just
it's
the
a
AM
bond.
chart? Okay, so it's
Yeah.
probably 40 grand a year or something like
So-
that.
70, and yeah, all combined, I
Well,
believe it'll be
30,
about
yeah.
72 grand a year for interest and principal.
Oh, that's the figure I was looking for, so we're looking at 72.
But it's a set number.
Yeah,
It is a
but
set
it's-
number, and
it's
I've
not
got
like a
the
mortgage.
amortization
And-
schedule
and-
on my desk,
And
yeah.
prior to this, on an interest-only basis, it was
30.
It was about 38.
38.
Yeah.
I was going to say nearly 40, but there we go, 38. It was 38, so 38 now moves to 72.
And a lot of that change would be not only the P part, but also the interest rate.
Yeah,
I bet you last year interest rates are close to, well, 2 years ago it's close to double probably. Okay. And again, we can, if we had to, I'm not saying we would, but is that open to
No.
repay? Is there like a penalty, 3
you
months
can
interest or
repay
something?
when it comes.
Only on the rollover?
Only on the rollover.
I understand, okay.
So if we get the money in our pocket, we just gotta wait and put it in an account and then
Yeah.
pay it off at the time.
That
Okay.
would be the, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good explanation, thank you, Raj. All right, anything else on the,
On the operating, so,
Operating side.
no,
Oh, I have
nutshell
one
is at
question.
the end of the year, I'm expecting us to basically be about, I mean, after you take that $20,000 into consideration, probably about 185,000 at this point in time favorable to budget, hopefully.
Despite all those extra things we spent money on.
Well, yes.
well, that's all good. If I look at the 6751, and if I did have, which did not have, the 2017 sheet in my hand, what would that have been? Do you have that in your?
You know, I didn't do a comparison to that, so. And I apologize, I don't have that
That's
number.
all right, Raj.
Okay.
I just thought that'd be another key number in terms of the year-over-year
Yeah.
uptick, whatever that is.
Should be pretty similar, but I can run that.
The one that'll be,
yeah, in
that'll be
future.
different will be the
Yeah.
strategic initiatives one
Mm.
probably.
And it's, all
Yeah.
the salaries and staff changes and whatever.
So going forward, I can actually put a comparative to the previous year. I think that is helpful information just to see trends.
Yeah, probably would.
All right, is there any, there's no more questions, I'm gonna pretend we're going to 4.2.
Okay.
The capital, which is page 8, I'm reading this document, right?
So 4.2 capital, essentially, I've got what we've spent year to date and where we expect to end up. Again, same format as in operating. So we categorize our capital expenditures into 5 different areas. Our largest category is the facilities and infrastructure area, and major projects in there include the fire hall and the community center design. The fire hall has a $2.2 million budget in the financial plan, which will be carried forward to 2019. Essentially, we spent very little this year.
And the balance of the three would have been budgeted for in 2019. Like we budgeted 2.2.
Exactly, so we'll carry it out.
Yeah, but I mean, the reason why there's only 2.2 in 2018 was because we didn't think we'd get it totally finished.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. And then the community center design budget in 2018 has a 543,000 provision in the budget, and then essentially we have a total budget of 750,000 for the community center design. So the difference between the 543 and the 750 is 2007 in the 2017 budget. And then the entire 750,000 for the community center design is expected to be spent by the end of this year.
So from a financing point of view, so we got 2 million of debt left over from the community lands. We've got $3 million on standby, which hopefully covers off the fire hall. And so if we sell something, can we reduce the 3 million if we had to, or we're committed to the 3 million once we draw?
We're only
Again,
committed to
we're-
what we draw, aren't we?
No, we'll be committed on the fire hall.
Where I'm going, let me complete it, just where I'm going here. So if we were to sell some community lands,
Yes,
then effectively that
Could we
capital will be
use-
used to offset what we need for the city hall, or something like that.
I can follow up with MF. I don't know the answer to that. I see where you're
Did the
going.
fire hall like we did the community lands, we did exactly the same process. And we did a temporary borrowing. So we weren't locked into the amount until we actually converted to the long-term
If we're not paying a
borrowing.
standby fee, I would guess that is correct. But as I said
Yeah.
earlier, we're not paying a standby fee. So you would assume for commercial lending, if you had to
Yeah.
back out of it, if you're paying a
If-
standby fees, then congratulations, it's yours.
Yeah,
Kind of thing,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, because if we'd sold enough, you know,
If, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I got it.
yeah, so, because we're just gonna do,
Yeah, we said
Construction
dollars a
loan.
dollar, we're just moving
Yeah.
around on the
Yeah,
deck chairs
yeah,
here a little
yeah.
bit. Okay.
That is a really good question, Steve, and what I will do is I will follow up with MFA.
Sure.
Because I see where you're going with that. We could actually, even though we don't have the opportunity to pay down the 2 million, if we were to sell community lands,
Yeah. If you
can
offset-
we use that as equity towards the fire hall
Yeah.
and borrow less than, borrow less than what we
I
had?
think under the community charter, we have to put because we have debt associated with the purchase of those lands, any money when we sell it, a portion of that debt,
Has to.
that proceeds.
So
That
they
was
support-
certainly the communication
Yeah.
to the public when it was happening.
Yeah,
No question
no,
about
that's,
that.
and I've got, but if we sold 1/5 of the land,
Yeah.
then I think that its 1/5 portion of the 2 million is gonna have to go in a pot
That'd be a key
for
thing to check.
for
Brad.
repaying the $2
Yeah,
million
if there's a loop-
debt, but the
If there's a loophole
balance,
in what Allison's
Yeah,
saying,
the
that
balance
would
we could
be very,
use.
very helpful.
the balance
Yeah.
we could use for the fire hall.
I mean, it boils down to that, we don't want to
Yeah.
be sitting on 2 million and we're paying another 2 million in debt, so is there any appropriate way we
Yeah.
can make the most of this,
Yeah,
if we're fortunate enough to have this amount of money in
we've
our
got
account?
that spreadsheet
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
However it works.
Yeah.
And if it's not this way,
It's been looked at.
Raj, is there another?
Yeah.
Because to sit there with a lump sum while we're paying debt on something else.
Raj, another question, which I don't want to bushwhack you today, but something you should think through. Allison may have this as normal in her head, this sort of thing, but what's the limits on how much we can borrow? I know there's some charter formulas
that's
and stuff.
on the local government website.
Yeah.
They,
Must that be an interesting number? I understand we're well under it.
it was huge.
Seems to me it was like 20 million bucks or something. We
Yeah.
looked at it a couple of years ago, but
Why don't we put that as an action item for me to bring
It's
back to the
very
finance
A little bit of
committee at the
macro
last, I'll do a
financial
little
summary or
diagram for
something.
you guys, and
Okay.
that way we've got it in our minutes
yeah.
on what our limit, what limits, the municipality has with
In
respect
fact,
to.
I would think, Raj, at some point in
borrowing.
time, the new council come in, and we'll be presumptuous about that, is that, I would think they'd ask a question, just give me a macro financial picture here about all this borrowing going on, et cetera.
Yeah,
And there's-
there is a liability servicing limits that
Yeah.
you do a calculation
Yeah.
and you calculate how much you can borrow. They take a look at what your taxation revenue is for the municipality and other sources of revenue, and then that establishes the borrowing limit of a municipality, and then you have a amount you can go borrow without, they call it an assent-free zone.
Okay.
But I'll bring the details of that to you
That's
to
good
the
enough
next
for
meeting.
today.
Okay.
We got one question.
There is an assent-free
Rob.
zone where you can borrow without having to go to.
Sorry, back to page 8.
Okay.
Sorry.
So back to page 8, so in terms of our transportation infrastructure, we have a, budget of, $948,000 approved for this year. And, our anticipated spending on that budget is, about 437,000, sorry, yeah.
So we're only gonna
projected.
spend half of it?
So, some of it will be carried for, actually, the Miller Road culvert is a large piece of that, which will be essentially deferred into the following year. So the major items in
Is
the
that
transport.
underneath the road, you mean, where the
Yes,
creek runs?
yes.
Terminal Creek?
Mhm.
Oh, that's good, oh, okay.
So, I mean, maybe, it's part of it probably doesn't belong in transportation infrastructure, it's probably a facilities infrastructure item, but.
Oh, it's a road.
So the significant projects in that area include the resurfacing of existing roads and the Malcolm Creek Trail System and Cardina Drive widening, Village Drive at the Village Drive intersection upgrade and replacement of a stairwell for the Kates Hill Trail back here, and most of those works should be done. The Miller Road culvert, as I mentioned, will be deferred into the following year. So that's.
Just talking about these culverts, can I just find out, yesterday at a meeting, it was drawn to our attention that the little bridge close to Catesville Chapel isn't even strong enough now to take the buses to get the children to IPS. They've had to reduce the load. Now, apparently we're aware of this, but at some point, Raj, and I didn't realize how important this was, that narrow little bridge is going to need some money. So you may want just to ask Bob if he knows anything about it.
There was some work done on that study on that bridge when Belterra was
Okay,
built.
then we need to pull the study in-house, and I don't have
Yeah.
details, I'm telling you at the moment, they can't even, the kids have got to walk to IPS.
Is this the bridge by the Children's Center?
Yeah, just past it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the little bridge is failing, basically. So,
IPS has got a school bus that they park up behind the school.
but only when it's empty. They can take that bus over empty, they can't take it with the
How much
kids
does
on
a
it.
kid weigh?
Well, full bus, it was over their limit, and the headmaster there will give you the chapter and verse. I was aware of it yesterday at a public meet, at a candidates meeting I was attending.
Seems
So-
significant.
So anyway, just
I'll follow up
flag
with
it,
Bob.
yeah,
Because it looks like we're going to seriously underspend at the end of this year.
Oh, yeah, but
No,
No.
we're not seriously. Actually, we're deferring work into the following year. So just to clarify, there's no areas of capital I see here that will be significant. Will be slightly favorable to budget in some areas.
If you take the 2.2 million off the 2.7,
Sorry, the
different.
two.
Yeah, I'm going to say, so what
Yeah.
it shows what.
It's shown, yeah, I
This is
showed
our,
this
this is our,
incorrectly.
this is our
Yeah.
snapshot in time at the
Yes.
end of the year, but in fact, what we're doing is deferring some of these
We're
amounts.
deferring some of
Oh,
these
yeah,
into
yeah.
the following year.
So if you fast forwarded this over 24 months, it would show a slightly different picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
So overall, into future years, I mean, I should have probably shown a longer projection than just to the end of 2018.
Hmm.
I mean, we will
It
be slightly.
doesn't matter, whatever you provide, we're gonna ask for more. They ask for look like this, so don't worry.
no, but what,
So-
I mean, to me, it's, you know, what
So
did
what will
we
we
budget
do?
for
Yeah.
this year and
Yeah.
why
So-
didn't we spend it, yeah.
So we'll be underspent this year because we're behind in our work, essentially.
Okay. That's it. That's it. That we buy that.
It's all
But,
Bob's fault.
So, in terms of equipment here, again, equipment infrastructure ranges from the acquisition of recreation equipment, marine spill response equipment, small parks equipment, signage, picnic tables, you name it. We're actually, again, we would be favorable to the end of the year, and some of the equipment's purchases may spill into next year if we hadn't had a acquisition of a generator, which was approved by council in 2017, but the funds didn't get carried forward to 2018 for that item. So, I mean, we essentially, what we do for capital, I was just gonna go back one step, is we put everything into reserves that we have for, available for capital, and then we draw down from the reserves as we need to fund the acquisition of those approved projects for the year. You were gonna say, Steve,
I
sorry?
was gonna say, is that the generator out here?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is generator.
Yeah. And information technology area includes provisions for failing computers essentially, and replacement of equipment that is nearing end of year. We are trending slightly over budget because again, this having been my first budgeting year, I didn't realize that a provision for replacement of computer equipment wasn't put into the budget for the year, but we are basically managing with minimal replacements of information technology equipment for this year.
And 2019 is going to be a bump.
It shouldn't be a bump, but we will put in a provision for replacement of equipment that needs to be
Tell you what,
replaced.
Raj, any business I'm dealing with right now, the information technology budget is seldom, if never, excuse my grammar.
It's always
spent.
over budget.
It's
Yeah.
always, and you know, these guys are real clever who designed this stuff, because we seem to be replacing it continuously,
So,
or upgrading it, isn't it? So,
They keep coming up with new ways to do things.
and,
Yeah.
yeah. So, other than that, public art, there was a $10,000 provision for a public art mural project in Snug Cove. There is that's been put on hold. There is a public art policy going forward to council today. It's in today's agenda. And in a nutshell, what the public art policy, the financial impact of that is requesting just $25,000 or $30,000 contribution to capital
I thought it
on an
was down to
annual
10.
basis. Pardon?
Isn't it down to 10 in the new policy?
The new proposed policy, I believe it's a $30,000
A year?
request annually to a public art reserve.
Okay.
And
We-
that's, I'm just giving
I
that
know,
as
I know.
information,
Okay.
and what would, the idea of that is it would go into a capital reserve, and if after 3 years they needed a art piece or public art that
Really
happened
nice
to
work.
cost more than the annual amount, they can take out of the reserve. And they're asking for only $2,800, I think about $2,800 in operating, in an operating budget to maintain public art that's acquired over time, and administration.
So
that-
I thought
it was $25,000.
I thought it was
but
25 to start with, and I just went sort of.
I didn't see a change
But
in that.
if we're, I mean,
Okay,
we're a small community, and I've seen the Gibsons, I've got the Gibsons policy, but West Van, I've got West Van, and they put in $50,000 a year. So $30,000 a year into a public art fund for a little community like us, that's a 1% tax. Yeah.
Seems a little chunky.
And,
But I think you probably got a base cost though. So we
Yeah.
got 1,900 parcels, Raj, what we got,
Just about.
1,800 parcels, 1,900 parcels.
roughly in that neighborhood, I think, right? Shit,
I was thinking 17 something.
17 something, close to 1,800.
is it under, because I've been using a figure of 1,900, is 1,800 more accurate?
I thought it was 2,200, depends whether they're built or unbuilt.
Right,
Yes.
would you mind? I wouldn't mind knowing, because we're actually talking to a lot of people right now. And we
Why
got,
would that be, Councillor?
I have no idea, sir. But that, we got figures ranging from 17 to 2,200, so
What we'll do is we'll give
Just
you
nail
a
it.
count of
Regarding-
the
the
2018
amount
parcels.
of, basically, the tax-paying parcels. How, you know, if you have a number
Yeah.
like $1 million and you've got 2,000, you divide it into that, but
We'll
if
give
not,
you
it's 1,800.
2018 residential taxpayer parcels via an email today.
Whatever.
It's down to 10. To ensure public art flourishes on Bow, the municipality will allocate an annual contribution of $10,000 to a newly established public art reserve. So I guess that we got to set up
Oh,
another
okay,
fund.
I must have had the old number then.
Yeah, requests for
Draft.
public art projects will be considered through the annual budget process with funding to come from the public art
Okay.
reserve. So 10,000 is a little more palatable than
Okay,
30,000.
sorry to have,
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you, we do take cooperative
Give you a
counsel
little
on
bit
a
of-
regular basis.
but still, given the fact that we're a community of 4,000 people and West Van's a community of 50,000 people, you know.
Showing how broad-minded I am here.
And I know, you've got an artist in the family.
If you broaden your community amenity contribution in your planning thing, you get
Yeah.
beyond affordable housing, which most communities do, you could actually, at an option, a deal by deal, have a community art contribution, which they do, because a member of my family is usually hired by people to do that. She would declare a conflict here, that's not the point.
I know
So
that.
other communities put a very broad amenity bylaw in place instead of a very narrow one, and then that's how you get your community art payment.
no, I
Effectively,
believe,
the people that
Yeah.
buy the condos pay for it.
essentially, I believe West Vancouver does do that in addition to, so the 25,000 that, or is it 25,000 you're saying? So the 50,000 comes from taxpayers in West Vancouver, and then there are voluntary
Public art indirect
amenity
tax.
contributions through zoning. And sometimes they're for public art, other times they'll be for other purposes such as affordable housing
Ballet
or
schools,
beautification
daycare,
or future density
And people make donations.
impacts. So those would go to various reserves depending upon which.
Okay, I'm gonna keep moving on
Okay.
here.
So basically, in a nutshell, again, our capital expenditures are essentially on budget. One of the things I was gonna mention to you in the heavy duty equipment was we have, I forgot to mention, is the 5-ton snowplow and salt truck has been ordered and it's in Burnaby being outfitted for use here, so it should be on the island in November. The previous truck is totally useless from what I understand. So, while I was a little bit worried if we get cold weather before November, and
This
he
is-
doesn't have a truck, he'll be in a little bit of a
Tell
pickle,
Bob
but we should be okay.
it's just-in-time delivery.
It is just-in-time delivery, thank you.
And in the meantime, measure the load factor for that bridge to make sure it can go
Yes,
across
so-
the salt.
With,
That's good thinking.
there you go.
Did I put that down?
Yes, actually do, because the people in Belterra will care very much about that.
That'd be embarrassment.
New
I-
truck goes into the creek.
The creek.
Now we don't
This
have
was
one.
drawn to my attention yesterday, I was not really aware of it.
All right, I'm gonna, let's say
Okay.
that.
Move on.
Daniel should be on his way down.
I'm gonna go to 4.3 if I may.
Okay, thank you.
And
So,
thanks, Roger.
4.3 is a draft schedule for our 2019 budget process, which we're just getting started on now. So,
I'm sorry, I meant 4.3, sorry, I got business license, thanks, Greg. So-
Oh, 4.3, oh, that didn't get attached in?
Yeah, this is why I did,
Oh,
it
I got
did.
starting on page 9, if I'm
Yep.
reading this right.
Yep, it's there.
He should be on his way downstairs.
Oh, Daniel.
It's here, page 9.
Yeah.
Oh, is it there?
Yes,
Okay.
and for page 9 of 45.
Is okay, that's the business
Yeah,
licensing,
that's,
sorry,
yeah,
okay.
that's for.
I had a draft schedule, basically, that was supposed to be 4.3.
Well, it's 4-4.
It's 4-4.
Was it 4.4? Oh, okay, sorry, I
It's
didn't see it
there.
got changed. Okay, it's later on, so. In terms of the draft business license bylaw, it's going to council for adoption this evening.
Third
I
reading.
the business license.
Am I right, Alison, third reading today for
No,
business
it's,
license?
I believe it's adoption, we did third reading.
We
Aye.
did third reading.
I thought we would left it open for further discussion, and that was the deal, we would be able to discuss further at third reading.
Well, it's got,
Here's Daniel.
Oh.
Daniel, come here.
No,
I think
it,
Steph's just gone to
That's
find you.
where
so, yeah, no, it received third reading
Oh,
at
so
the
it's-
last.
Did we
Okay,
give
so
it third
fourth
reading at
reading.
the last time?
And so today will be, this evening is for adoption.
That's it, we left it open for discussion, that was it.
No, the motion from the last one is the one that's here, second and third reading. And we
Yes.
split it into two, because I went and checked my notes last night. And second reading was 100%. Third reading had 2 opposed. So it passed. So it got second and third reading at the last meeting, right? Yeah, so this is for final. And you got my email about the typos.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So essentially, Michael, and for the committee's benefit, the changes that were made from when we had the open house. I think council heard the community's concerns and the finance committee's concerns about the fee that was being charged to home-based businesses where there is essentially no outside customers coming and going. And they reduced that fee from the proposed $50 for business license. They'll still require a business license, but it was increased to $25. And the intention of that fee is just to recover the administrative costs of processing a business license application.
So what's not in here is the report that Daniel's got on tonight's council agenda. And,
Yeah, and the rest of the information, yeah, exactly, is for background, and maybe I'll just let Daniel quickly summarize the changes in his report from what's been presented.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the main one is the council changed one of those fees. We made a few other changes, so currently the bylaw that's in your package talks about exemption for farmers market and expanding that to like farmers market or crafts fair, kind of broaden some of the exemptions. Changed a few other just pieces to make some of the language consistent throughout.
So Daniel, if I look at, I'm not sure you're on the same page number, the page 19, bottom right-hand
Yeah.
corner. So the $50, I'm 3 up from the bottom, the $50 becomes
Yeah.
25, is
Yeah.
that the only change?
That's the only-
Got it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm from Missouri on this, and obviously council has supported it twice. I don't think we're gonna get cost recovery in this. I did a little math on this thing, and even if you get we gotta hire somebody, I gotta be $19.23 an hour, and they gotta work from home. So, my eyes fogged over when I made that calculation, so I would just make that comment. The idea this is gonna be financial, I mean, I don't think it's gonna be financially neutral, but if council in their wisdom decides that it's worth an expenditure to have business licenses for other reasons, I can understand that logic, but I don't think we should see this being one of these cases where we say there's no quote financial implication. We've seen that movie a couple of times before. That's my comment, and Sylvia.
And I'd like to reinforce that, and I also believe that to think that other departments are not going to be impacted by this, I just don't think it's true. It's not just a licensing officer that will be called in. It will be a bylaw officer. There will be impacts on other parts of the organization.
If you
So
build on,
So I agree, like, if you want to do them, fine, you know, for all sorts of reasons. Fire protection probably is number one for me. But I think caution in declaring that it's going to be revenue neutral.
I take that point. There's lots of reasons for doing this. To single out that the fee revenue is going to equal the expense of this is probably not accurate. It doesn't mean to say that it isn't a good thing to do, and basically we voted for the fact that it is. However, the single statement that income will neutralize expense alone is probably not accurate. We've no way of measuring it. I don't know how we'd possibly measure
I
it.
don't know.
I reflect upon our parcel tax discussion too, in terms of one of the reasons we got through of the what do you call it, the garbage stickers, rather than parcel tax. That's one reason we got rid of the garbage stickers, because we're spending so much time on it, you know, and rolled it into the general base, so, anyway. But I appreciate there may be reasons to do it. My comment is very narrow. The idea we're gonna project this to be financially neutral. I'm from Missouri, but anyway.
so basically the $5,000 cost, I was having a little trouble with $5,000 for, is that one person, 1 day a week?
Do you mean the 0.5?
Yeah, the point, I thought
Oh,
it
the
was.
0.5 FTE, I
Is
think
it
it's
a-
about
I didn't think it
35.
was a
I
.5.
ran it at 1,040 hours a year, I divided.
I didn't think it was a point, I
No,
thought it
it's
was
a
a
0.5
.5.
FTE, and so basically a 0.5 FTE works for that position is about a $35,000 cost,
Okay, but it
and
says
actually
$5,000
with benefits
in this
in, it's
report.
about it's not a $19 an hour position. It's, we calculated it on approximately a $26 or $27 an
Well, I
hour.
put 15%
So
So where does the
supervisory loading,
$5,000
Yeah,
and
with
30%
that,
for
yeah.
benefits.
Yeah.
When I backed that out, I got $19.23, and that's they're working from home and have no mileage. And you don't have to have any floor space dedicated,
Oh,
they
maybe
got no
that's
desk.
something else.
I'm not sure how you did your calculations, Steve, but I went off of our labor model, and a $26 an hour position with benefits in works out to about $70,000 a year, roughly, in our budgeting model. And so I just took half of that. I mean, I just did a very simple calculation.
I'll defer to the expert. I'm still from Missouri. I haven't got to Kansas yet.
So,
But he's making his way up to Wyoming.
Is there something else in our agenda
Oh.
tonight where we're hiring some extra staff?
Sorry?
Is there something else in our agenda tonight where we're hiring some extra staff?
I don't believe
I had a
so.
$5,000 number in my head.
No, I'm not
That-
aware.
I know
Is it
when
a
Bonnie
report?
brought bylaw for streets and traffic, they.
Oh,
did
that's
all
the
our
$5,000,
figures.
that's
Yeah,
the
flyers,
5,000,
so.
okay.
I mean, I think, in terms of, what we wanna do when we implement this is to have some way to track actually those hours, so it's like
Yeah.
how much time is bylaw spending, how much time is part of it, but we kind of don't know that at this point.
Can we not create special line codes
Yeah.
or timesheets?
That's what we've talked
Yeah,
about.
people
doing.
report their
Yeah.
time
So-
by
By
hour,
function,
so we
yeah.
can.
And so it's true,
allocate
probably,
function
like, we won't know until we do it for a year, and then we're gonna have a better tracking system. I mean, I know one of the things I've heard a lot during the open house, and other things, is people saying, this is a cash grab for municipality. And I think that's why the reports have been stressing that it's not, like, it's revenue neutral in terms of we're not gonna be making more in
Exactly.
fees, right? But so it's kind of,
But
But you know
the
the-
trouble is,
yeah.
when you look at it from the other side, you know darn well it's not, because quite honestly, it's going to create the implementation. If it goes smooth without any ripples, okay, that's great. Otherwise, you've got supervisors involved, you've got the CAO involved, you've got you involved. I mean, all of that is time away from
So from that
what you normally
perspective,
do.
from
But
that
the other
perspective,
side-
what business licensing wouldn't, I agree, business licensing wouldn't be full recovery, but what it is still cost neutral in the sense that we're not incurring additional costs. Right now, what we've identified is the additional cost of business licensing to the municipality will be the 35,000, the extra 0.5 FTE. So what it will do is take Shell's time, my time, away from other things that we do to work on business licensing, but that is a sunk cost to the municipality anyway, so, but it's not full
I'm just
cost of
guessing,
recovery.
actually.
So I get your points as well.
Yeah. I'm just guessing that you and Daniel and others are getting paid more than $19.23
Yeah.
an hour. So we allocate the costs.
So we haven't.
I haven't got
yeah.
to Kansas yet.
And we don't do cost allocation like that. I mean, we'll keep that in mind, but we're not going to allocate everybody's time to see how much time they spend on business licensing, because the cost of doing that would far exceed any benefits that we would reap
Right,
from that.
actually, I thought when you gave the report to council, you did it very diplomatically, said something effective, mixed emotions on the finance committee, so I got it.
So
My
the
comment
other,
has been made.
the other side of the coin is, people phone up right now and say, do you have business licensing? And the answer is no. And that means to them that they can do anything they want anywhere on the island that they want to do it. So I think having business licensing, so when somebody phones up and says, do you have business licensing? And we say yes, and then they have to register their business, there is probably going to be some savings of the not having the complaints because Joe Blow's now running a business in their house that they shouldn't be running because they got told they didn't need a business license, and the complaints of having to go out and enforce all of that. So there's going to be.
I don't want to beat this thing to death, but if I'm going to do something that I think is a little on the border of the zoning, I'm sure as heck not going to apply for a business license. You know,
But people think they can do anything they want because we don't have business licensing.
I think the minutes read a stimulating debate.
Thank you.
move on. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's like discussing around a kitchen table. I set my piece. All right, where are we here? Wait a minute, Chairman's lost control of the meeting here. I'm on 4.4, page 44.
Well, can I just, if we raise the rates, would you be happy? And want it? Or
Well,
are you
I-
just opposed to having business licensing?
I don't see the benefit. My eyes glazed over. If somebody said it's gonna help us with grants, that's the most
Yeah.
powerful argument I've heard.
And health and safety. Noise complaints.
I don't know how that's gonna help you. If I'm gonna run a noisy business, I'm sure not gonna call up Daniel and say, Daniel, need a license for a noisy business.
Can I
I
just
would
make,
say this is a much easier mechanism to shut people down,
yeah.
or at least to enforce some
Yeah.
sort of penalty on
I'd like
problematic.
to
Right
inter-
now, our approach is like land use bylaw infractions and court
Yeah.
orders.
And the other thing
the goal for
is,
this would be, we're ticketing and we're enforcing business licenses if it's easier.
Yeah, and Daniel, I'll defer your expertise on that narrow area, certainly.
and short-term vacation
I'd
rentals.
just like to introduce two new concepts. One is called data scraping and the other is host compliance. And we can go into that at another meeting.
Yeah.
But the fact is exactly the same platforms that bought us 8 or 9 or 10 different types of short-term vacation rentals are now being used to monitor those vacation rentals. You cannot open up a new Airbnb in Vancouver unless you give Airbnb your Vancouver business license. So I wonder if we maybe could continue this with the chair's permission to another time, because I think the technology, this deal was only signed 8 weeks ago, and I hear of 2 more that have been signed. So I think the ground is shaking under our feet.
Yeah, and if we don't have business licensing, we're gonna have extreme trouble regulating short-term vacation
I am
rentals.
happy to move on.
And our land use bylaw requires us to regulate B&Bs
My
through
car's on
business
the highway out of
licensing.
town.
I think the chair's in Chicago now, it's looking
All
better.
right, I have gone to page 44 here with everybody's permission.
So 44, I apologize, it doesn't have a title on it, but this is our 2019.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks, Daniel. This is our draft schedule for the 2019 budget process. And we're just updating our labor model currently, and we'll be kicking off the budget process with our managers next week, or on the 15th. Just kind of running the schedule by you for your input, or if you'd like to get your input to see if you'd like to see anything else incorporated into the budget process. But essentially, we'll be updating our operating and capital budgets in the last couple of weeks in October, and reviewing our revenue and finance finance updates will be done again in the first week of November. We'll do that analysis and preliminary a review of the budget to see what kind of impact or pressure we'll have on the tax rate. And then we'll have the departments, we'll be working on the budget book towards October as well. We'll review the preliminary budget with the CAO and managers before the middle of November and start working on our budget book. We'll have a council workshop and update so that council's aware of that information, and we'll also bring it to the finance committee meeting. Well, actually, we do public notification, and then we'll bring back the public's feedback and the pressures on the budget to the finance committee towards the end of January, so that the finance committee can provide their input before it goes to council in February.
Question,
Yes.
why would you not want some input from the finance committee, since part of their job description is advice to the financial
I'd be on the same page as
prior
Allison there.
to the budget book going to council or going out to, I mean, looking at it after it's been through all that processing? I guess, like, I'll refer to Gallon's Trust, I know you two will love that. But we approved the budget principles as well as, what assumptions were gonna be made in doing the budget. Plus at the finance committee, before it went to trust council at the last September trust council meeting. And the finance committee would approve the draft budget before it goes to the trust council, and after that, it then goes out for public consultation. And then they look at all the public consultation and review it, recommend changes or not, and so there's 2 clear, so I don't see any point in the finance committee being the last to look at it. To me, I would have thought you would want us to be the first to look at it, so we would ask any of the questions that the public might be asking, so you've got the answers for them, and any concerns that we might have would be addressed up front rather than at the end of the piece.
I don't have any objection to that. I was gonna be following our budget principles in coming up with the budget. So when staff prepares a budget, that budget will be based on pressures to the municipality, cost pressures that are imposed to the municipality. And then when we actually go out to the public, we're getting their feedback. So I had thought that we would have public this is what's required by the municipality, this is what the public has said, and then we would get finance committee feedback at that point. I basically would not want to do a budget where if I bring it to the finance committee meeting, and the finance committee meeting says, we would think you should stay under the 3% tax rate increase, then I am actually cutting back my budget and making decisions based on finance committee input that may not reflect the requirements of the budget. So I can bring it back to the finance committee before, but I don't believe what we present to the public in terms of what's required by the municipality to meet its obligations and should be cut back or pared back.
I wasn't suggesting
earlier,
that.
but, okay.
What I was suggesting was, sometimes you miss something.
Yeah.
Sometimes you haven't thought about a question.
Oh, exactly.
And doing all that dry run and making sure that this committee is comfortable with what you're
Mhm.
taking forward. I mean, we might say, well, you know, you're gonna
I
have
think that would
difficulty
be
with a
a-
10%
I just
increase.
echo what Allison
Yeah.
said again, I think the
Okay.
idea to the degree that we make some small positive, helpful suggestions from time to time, and the fact that we ask the dumb questions rather than the public may actually be helpful. To me, I looked at your
I
schedule
appreciate
here,
it, yeah.
and we're in your hands, Raj, but,
Okay.
I mean, I see that line, review budget with CIO and Andrews, I got it. And then you got council workshop on January the 7th, if I'm reading this. I would think sometime, you know, between those two events,
Yeah.
there's some chat regarding a draft budget without trying to put a pin in the date today sort of thing.
Early
It's
December.
like there's 6 weeks there
Yeah.
between whatever that is, November the 16th
Okay.
and Jan 7th.
Yeah, so the 12, 14, 28 is basically, you're gonna have the budget book ready to go
We should be
before
working on it,
Christmas
yes.
break.
So somewhere before that,
Somewhere just before that,
yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
beginning of
early
December.
Yeah, I'd say
Okay.
first
I
10 days of
appreciate that,
December, give or take
Yeah.
a
Okay.
day or something.
Yeah, no, if the finance committee could get together in the first week of December, I would really appreciate that.
Okay, so, I guess the other question I had was, you're gonna update and analyze the 2019 tax roll. Do we get that before the end of December?
What was the
We
question
get
again?
the preliminary tax roll in November,
Yeah,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
in November and then again in January.
And then in
Okay,
January
okay,
is a
okay.
completed
So
roll.
that was, yeah.
Right.
And then one more.
Yeah.
Your key projects information, how are you gonna figure out what's a key project?
Where, sorry?
I'm in mandate profile project, key projects.
Oh. Key projects information.
I mean, sometimes something that's only a small amount of dollars might be a very key project from a political perspective or a public reaction perspective. Thinking of the toilet at Sandy Beach
Well, our
for the Senator
capital-
Road, for example.
Our managers will have provided all of their input into their capital projects for the following year by that time.
Yeah, but what's gonna go out for public consultation and in the budget book is key projects information. So I guess my question is, how are you gonna define key?
Why don't we just take out the, well, essentially, yeah, I would provide information on all of the projects.
I mean,
So,
yeah,
I mean, when I do the budget book, I would have information on all
yeah,
projects.
I guess
I
what's,
would just call it project information. Can revise that.
Roger, at the end, where you've got adoption 5-year plan, 5-year, you put the 18th of February. I've got our second council meeting of that month on Monday the 25th. That's the most likely date. And the first one on the 12th,
yeah.
which is a Tuesday after Family Day, as being the most likely date.
Okay, I'll.
I know these are
yeah.
subject to
These
confirmation.
are subject to change.
I'm
yeah.
kind of, because of travel plans, I'm kind of hung up on that schedule, so.
Okay,
Yeah, so you're assuming that the process would be the second and fourth Mondays of the month would continue to be the regular council
Yeah.
meetings. So, if,
second Monday and fourth Monday, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
correct those dates, essentially, I was, assuming that those were the council dates, I hadn't checked and verified our council schedule.
well, one would assume the 18th might be the sort of second, yeah.
When does strategic planning happen with
I was
the
just gonna ask that.
That was my, yeah. I don't know.
strategic planning for the new council? Do you know when that date is?
I don't believe that date is
set
set yet.
Because that becomes really
Key,
critical.
yeah.
At a minimum, there needs to be some
For
expectation that there are going to be priorities they want to attend to immediately that aren't necessarily in the budget. So there's going to need to be some money at least allocated there.
Yeah.
It was in November, but.
It was
for
in
your
January, wasn't
I
it?
thought it was January.
Was it
as well.
January?
Because November was the election.
Well,
Yeah, I think it's November, I'm gonna check.
You're thinking November too?
Oh, just a
I thought
minute.
it was.
November is
Oh,
actually
look,
the
I've got it in my
council
calendar, goes
orientation.
back that far.
Correct.
If I can type in the right PIN number.
It's,
Mhm.
to me, that's really
Yeah.
critical, because the fact that council was able to identify some pots of money really gave them the momentum
Mhm.
to get going, and so I think the budget does need to reflect.
So that would have been,
some way.
I'm getting back to 2015 here.
I could have been there and back already, Allison.
Okay. I've got First Credit Union strategic planning in here. Strategic
Okay,
plan,
okay.
January 22nd.
Okay, wow, it was really late.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be pretty late in the budget cycle, in my
Are we doing our strategic plan?
Well, that was when we did it in, for January 2015, which was the first strategic plan session for the new council, last term, or this term.
Absolutely
Was
true.
January 22nd.
But the conversation that ensued after that is, okay, fine, could we at least discuss amongst ourselves doing that earlier?
Yeah, exactly, so,
Because, you know, hey, the horse is bolted and now we're
Yeah.
running it, we're now
Yeah.
busy fixing the stable door.
Exactly.
yeah, so the election is on October 20th, the new council's
2
sworn in
years.
on November the 1st. So would it be, and all the orientations happening in November, so is it
December.
I'll,
reasonable to assume December?
December.
Joyce, I'll discuss that with Kathy, and what we can do
Yeah.
is typically council initiatives are funded through available surplus, because it's a one-time funding initiative, and what we are able to do is put a provision for unassigned initiatives, and then have council decide on what the initiatives are. So we would put we could put a provision in the financial plan for council initiatives. They may not be identified by that time, and then they can be identified at a later time.
Okay, as long as something can be done.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, so we can
What
always
you may
put a
wanna do,
provision.
Raj, just as an idea, maybe just put a one-liner in a council strategic planning session, question mark.
So
Like
it's
nothing
flagged in
after
the-
it, you know
yeah.
what I mean? So at least it's an issue when people look at this, they say, oh yeah, we gotta put a pin in that thing.
Okay,
Post-October, whatever the date is, the 20th or whatever.
January 22nd, yeah.
Well, if you're gonna go for public consultation, 26th, yeah. But it's gotta be in the, probably would get discussed in the council workshop budget update,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
Otherwise, I
I
like
think
the
we're
timeline.
through the closed meeting unless there's any
Okay,
other
yeah.
items. Raj, that's a good presentation, and I'll say that publicly.